You'll get more than you expect with McValue at McDonald's. Like deals on your late night go-tos when the party goes till dawn. And savings on their faves. So date night always passes the vibe check. Plus, when the fam shows up for the weekend, you can show out for breakfast.
Buy one breakfast sandwich, add one for $1. Only in the app. Limited time only at participating McDonald's. Valid once a day. Must opt into rewards. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
This episode discusses sexual violence and includes graphic content. Please take care while listening. Imagine a childhood marked by violence, sexual abuse, and unbelievable loss. Imagine sitting face to face with the people who caused you unthinkable harm in your life. Now imagine choosing healing over punishment and empathy over silence. I'm Melanie Ng, and in this episode of The Big Story, we speak with Amanda Carrasco, a Canadian activist, survivor, and author of Becoming the Brave One, My Journey to Justice. Her newly released memoir challenges how we look at justice and healing. Amanda, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your journey in this very brave memoir. We'll talk about the definition of brave and what it means to you. So first of all, thank you for joining.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I want to talk about this memoir, newly released, and this is just one part of your journey because you have been very outspoken for some time about what you've been through. To give people some background about you, the memoir is broken up really into two parts. The first talking about your journey through harm as a sexual assault survivor and also as a family member after homicide survivor. And then the second part, which we will also focus on, is your journey through the healing. And both are so very important. I want to begin with part one, Amanda. For anyone who is listening, and again, we will be going into some graphic detail as well, but if you could talk about some of the traumas that you experienced in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always important, when you're looking to make changes or to heal you to figure out how we got here. And so you need to acknowledge and validate what happened to you. So writing this book was definitely a big piece of that for me, being able to sort of take everything and almost hold it in my hands and look at it. And that includes, like you mentioned, being sexually assaulted as a minor and as an adult by multiple different people on different occasions, and sometimes multiple occasions with the same people. So there's a lot of history of sexual violence that I experienced, all through growing up and then into my early 20s. And then when I was 16, I was living with my sister and her husband and their kids, and he decided to murder us. It was a plan. And my sister and I had had an argument. Otherwise, I would have been home. But so that argument saved my life. It's why I'm still here. So I lost all of them in one night, on top of everything else. So it was absolutely complex trauma, because there's trauma upon trauma, reoccurring, and trying to figure it out and be lost in all the middle of it.
For you to find this voice, for so many people, as you're describing it, what feels like the easy thing to do is to hold back, is to stay silent and to internalize. For you, you went the opposite route, and I know it did not happen overnight. Why was it so important for you to take that route and to join on podcasts and to be an advocate, to be outspoken in what you went through?
There's a few reasons, and I would say the first one is because learning other people's story and what they experienced and also what helped them helped me. That was definitely a part of my healing journey. Like, we are to be connected. I believe that we are built for community, and there's a reason. Sometimes we're harmed in community, but we heal in community. So people that have walked alongside me very closely, but also people I've never met that I've read their stories or listened to their podcasts, those have been helpful. So that was really important. The other reason is because we need change. there are things that are wrong in our systems, in our communities, that absolutely need to be changed. And that's not going to happen unless we share our experiences and what happened and how we can do things
Amanda, you've
differently.
spoken quite a bit about restorative justice, and an excerpt from your writing. Restorative justice is not for the weak, it is for the brave. Let's first define what restorative justice is, and then I want to go back to that bravery piece.
For restorative justice, it's very hard to have a specific definition. So what we will say is it basically puts the victim back into the center of the process. Right now, we have an adversarial system when it looks to criminal justice, and we pit people against each other. And just as I said, like we live in community, so we're harmed in community, and we can heal together. So it's bringing people together. But again, like focusing on the victim, which is the most important piece, and asking them three important questions, which is who was harmed, how were they harmed, and what are their needs? Like how do we move forward in all of this? And our current system does not do that. It fails. And that's part of why it's really not working in a lot of different aspects. It's failing survivors, it's failing communities, and it's failing offenders. So I think it's really important for us to understand restorative justice. And like you said, like it's for the brave. Some people think that it's a soft on crime approach, and it is exactly the opposite. I've worked with offenders that have said it's easier to sit in my jail cell than it is to face the people that I've harmed. So it's really fundamental that we look at these principles and concepts and implement them, not just in criminal justice, but education, in healthcare, in a lot
From
of
your
different
personal
areas.
experience, and I cannot imagine this, you described some of the traumas that you experienced growing up, but now coming face to face with your offenders, not just in court, beyond that, what was that experience like initially?
Right. So I actually had two restorative justice opportunities. One was informal, that I initiated at a young age, in my mid 20s, not even knowing what restorative justice was at that point. But I asked to sit down with one of the family members who had sexually assaulted me, because I had questions, which is so normal for victims. There's things that we don't know. So he was gracious and agreed to sit with me. And that gave me a lot of clarity and insight. I was definitely scared, but we had a prior relationship. He's a family member. So I was able to, sit with him and talk with him one-on-one. I caution anyone in doing that, without a formal training facilitators, because one of the big things about restorative justice too is, it is about healing and not harm. So we want to make sure that all parties involved are safe. It has to be done in a safe way. That's so important. So I don't recommend doing what I did. I didn't know, but I did it. And I'm so glad that I did, because it really did bring a restoration and a healing, in terms of the dialogue that happened. And then, 3 years ago, I sat in a restorative justice circle, and this was a very formal process because we had to enter the prison and all those kinds of things. And I was able to sit with him and talk to him and share with him, my pain and my needs, and use my voice and get some of my power back that I had lost when he tried to take us all.
How did that feel for you in that moment? Did it feel cathartic? Did you feel like you regained some power in those moments? Did you feel like you got answers in those moments? Because this is beyond, as you said, in a restorative justice circle, a very formal setting like this. It's not in a courtroom. So being in a different atmosphere and hearing your voice and hearing his voice, what was that like for you?
It was
Yeah.
horrible. The very, like, all the lead up to it and everything, like I was, physically ill, like it was really hard. But then I had a specific requirement, which was that he never stand up over me, because I was afraid of him. This was the man who would have taken my life and did take my family. So he was not allowed to stand up at any point when I was in the room. And so when I walked into the room, his back was slightly facing towards me, and I could see sort of the shoulder and his arm on the chair. And I saw that he was shaking. And that hit me. So I did feel powerful in that moment, in amongst all of my fear and amongst all of my, not wanting to do this per se. And I was like, wait a second, he's afraid of me, and I saw that, and I never expected that. It never occurred to me. that would ever be a thing. And so I felt some power in that moment, and that was huge. And so then going forward and sitting down, I had written my own script. I knew, like, the things that I wanted to say, the things that I wanted to ask. And so we sort of got started and we got into those things. And when I saw what I said to him about how much pain he's caused me and that I carry every single day of my life, it will never leave. You can't fix that. But being able to tell the man that caused that, what he did, and like tangibly explain to him and show him that pain, that definitely did something for me. That brought a level of healing that I hadn't had before. And so then once we got through those things, there was sort of organic discussion and dialogue that happened after that wasn't planned, that again also sort of brought some healing. So it's incredible the things that can happen that you're not expecting. But I'm grateful for that opportunity. It was re-traumatizing. Like it was hell to walk in that room to see him. And it's not an immediate fix. Like walking out of the room, I couldn't sleep for 3 weeks. So it's very, very hard. And that's why I say, like, this is not some soft on crime for anybody. These are the hardest things that you'll ever do. Being held accountable, being face to face with people, like, but this is real and raw, and it's where true change and transformation happens. Like I say, for a healing on my side, but also for, accountability for those who commit harm.
Amanda, let's talk about the Canadian justice system and where it stands for those who are on both ends, for those who are the victims and for who are the victims and survivors, I should say, and for those who have traumatized family members, loved ones, strangers. Where do you think things stand right now? Are they in a space where it works for, let's start with the victims?
No. No, basically no. I mean, our system, like restorative justice, is underfunded, undereducated. People don't know what it is. They don't know how to access it. In some places like Ontario and Nova Scotia right now, in Ontario, D4, the Crown policy doesn't allow for referrals for sexual assault, and that's got to change. That's not okay. We know the statistics in terms of domestic violence and sexual assault when people report the failures of the system for victims. And restorative justice is a way that we can address that in a less obtrusive manner for both parties and actually try to find some results. So that's really important. We've got things like community justice initiatives. In Langley, they have a new program called collaborative sentencing, where it's bringing the victim and offenders together, where the offender is admitting the harm and talking about a sentencing plan together. Could you imagine being a part of that decision? How empowering is that for the victim? And so this is really, really important. You're also going to be able to address, how did we get here? And then maybe be able to work out a way to lower recidivism rates. The data's there. The living testimonies are there. This can happen. But yet the funding's not there and not enough people know about it. So again, like you asked me, why do you do this? Why do you tell your story? Because we need people to know and understand that this is important, that it works, and we need to demand it from our government, that we need funding. We need, this implemented. This has to be offered to more victims. It has to be more accessible, and we're going to find safer communities.
Do you believe that, okay, we have a new federal government in play right now via Mark Carney, and there's a lot of conversation about revamping this, doing that. Do you think this should be, where on a priority list do you think this should stand? And I'm asking this because, of course, you're gonna come from a different perspective, considering your history. But as you said, healing as a community, often you'll see these stories in headlines. We've seen a lot of similar stories in the headlines. Thing is that as a community, we, as you've been alluding to, it's about the support, it is about the learning, it is about the healing. So it doesn't just impact the victim. It impacts everyone around you. So why do you believe this should fall on a priority list for, it's not just I don't believe it's just the federal government, because this is going to have to happen provincially as well. There's different levels of government at play. What sort of action plan do you think should come into play for this new government?
So the hard part is that the answer is yes. And it's hard because from a government policy perspective, You do have to have the priorities in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4. But that's not the answer. The answer is yes, all of the above, because it has to be a holistic approach. Why is crime happening? You know, and it's because of a lot of reasons. We need better mental health supports. We need better housing. We need better interventions in terms of addictions. We need to address poverty issues and those types of things. So restorative justice, should be at the forefront of all of those, but it's also got to be combined. If you could put that in the center of a wheel, instead of prioritizing 1 through 10, let's put restorative justice at the center again, because it can be implemented not just in criminal policy, but in healthcare, in all kinds of places. Put it in the middle of the wheel and then have all of the other things come out as the spokes. That's how I believe the priorities for the government should really look.
Amanda, what do you say to someone who might be listening and says, listen, for someone who has committed such crimes, they should have no voice. They should have no contact with their victims. They don't deserve that. What do you say to that?
Well, I say it's the victim's choice. It's up to them. There may be victims that would prefer to go a traditional criminal justice route, and that's great. That's up to them. They should be able to determine that. But what I'm saying is they should know about and be offered alternatives. They should know, what this looks like and how it could benefit them. Let the victims be the driver, not the rest of us, anyone armchairing or watching from a side. You don't know. You do not know what this victim needs. They have to be the one to decide what is the best route and option for them. And right now we're really failing them because we've really only been giving them this one route, and we've got to do better.
You have traveled across Canada. You have lived in various areas, and where you are situated right now is in the U.S., in California, doing some work there. Can you talk about some of the advocacy that you have been taking part in and the different programs? I also want to compare Canada versus U.S. and what you've seen when it comes to various programs.
Yeah, I would say as a whole in general, and from my limited experience and perspective, I think the US is actually doing a really good job of implementing restorative justice in its education sector. It seems to be there's a lot more funding and options in terms of that. So I'm very hopeful and excited for the future, because when we teach this to our children and how to come together instead of putting kids apart when there's conflict, but working through them again in a safe way, not just throwing them together, because that's not helpful either. But I've seen some really amazing things, especially in education. It's definitely been an uphill battle on the criminal justice side in the US. I will give credit to Canada. I feel like we're leading a little bit more, but I hate it. It's hard because I give credit and then I makes it seem like, oh, we're good. No, we're not good. But there's been some progress, and I know some of my American colleagues have looked at, different things that we've done in Canada, which is exciting. But both of us are failing. If I had to give a report card right now, like it's an F. With a can do better, and not giving
room for
up
improvement. Yeah,
exactly. Needs improvement, guys. And we can do it. It works. It's hard because it does intersect with politics, because the tough on crime sells. When you make people afraid, that's when they kind of go, okay, well, who's going to keep me the safest? Oh, who's building more prisons, who's hiring more police, that kind of thing. Police are typically reactionary. They don't even have the resources. They're not given enough supports to be able to be as proactive to try to build community, which should be part of their job, but they're not there. We don't have that. So I think it's really important that we realize that there's so much more that we can do, and this is important to for the betterment of all of us, really. Just putting victims at the front,
Through your voice and through your work, Amanda, let me ask you to, fast forward to today. Do you forgive those who have wronged you?
Oh my gosh, that's so hard. Okay, I would say that I definitely have forgiven the majority of people who have harmed me. When it comes to the man that takes my sister, saying I forgive him is too simplified. It's way more complex than that, because every day is different. It might be a day that something big happens, good or bad, and my sister's not here. And I will get angry, and I will hurt. And so do I feel like I forgive him in that moment? No. Are there times where I'm at peace? Yes. So I think that forgiveness has been weaponized. And I think that we need to just not simplify it to that. It's more complex. Our relationships are more complex. So do I walk in a way that holds bitterness and anger against him every day? No, I do not. So if we hold that definition of forgiveness, then sure, we'll go with that. But it's complicated, you know?
How important is it for you? And again, anyone who's listening to this podcast, if it takes one person, two people, 24 people who are listening to this, and it opens their eyes to a different approach, is that mission accomplished for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I was one person and I, learned about it and it's changed my life. And so, yeah, that's exactly it. Like one person at a time.
Amanda Carrasco, Becoming the Brave One, available now. I appreciate you sharing your journey and your insights and the very important work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity.
And that was The Big Story. As always, you can send us feedback on this episode or any other episode by emailing us at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca. You can find us on the Seeker app or on all of your favorite podcast players. Please make sure to rate, review, follow, and share. I'm Melanie Ng. Appreciate you listening.